Inner Peace, Better Health, the show where we explore the crossroads of purpose, healing, and powerful personal reinvention. I'm your host, Shreya, and today's guest is Louis Kim, entrepreneur, investor, and spiritual leader who went from building multi-million-dollar business to breaking down burning out and building a life of meaning from the inside out. Louis now guides others from hustle to healing, from the grind to grounded purpose. If you have ever wondered if burnout could be the beginning of something sacred, this conversation is your sign. So, welcome, Louis. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And burnout often feels like a failure, but for you, it became a gateway. So, what was your breaking point and what changed afterwards?
It Burnout doesn't feel like a failure just at the burnout, but it feels like failure while you're coming out of what the sense of the burnout is. And often you don't even know that you've burnt out.
Mm.
Um, and so for me, I found myself having sold a business, sold businesses and done very well. And with lots of material means, just miserable. And it was not understanding just how exhausted I was from the life that I was leading. And it wasn't to say that I was leading a life of excess, but it was one that was purely focused on hustle and building and growing. But there was no purpose behind what I was doing.
Yes, yes. And thank you for sharing your story with our audience. And looking back, was burnout a gift in disguise or something you wish you could have avoided?
Uh, I think we all have the path that we're supposed to be on. And for me, everything that happens for us in our lives, I believe, are gifts. It's a choice. Life will absolutely bring you pain. It's an inevitability. We have no choice when pain enters our life. What we do have a choice on is how we experience that pain. And so for me, all of that pain and suffering that I found myself in have turned out to be the greatest gifts that I have, because at a certain point, being human, we don't want to natively exist in a state of suffering. And so when you are suffering in that way, it is, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And so I found myself in that place, and it was a gift because I had to learn this, and I had to learn that I was choosing to stay in this place of suffering.
Yeah. And that moment, it's really wild how it often comes afterward, the success and not failure.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a good point. It's such a good point because I believe the issue is that in modern life we spend too much time focusing on the outcome,
Mm.
and so we spend all of our time. I will be happy when, or I will be happy if, and so we have this notion that it's outside of us, and the truth is it's all within. And the joy and the way you find constant fulfillment and growth is you love the journey, right? You love the outcome is a testament to what has occurred, but it is not the end all be all, because what will happen is you'll get there and then you realize, oh well, why am I here? You could spend years building something, but when you finally get there, how long do you actually get to enjoy that?
Mm.
It's not long.
Yes, yes. And you have walked both paths, high stake business and deep spiritual awakening. So, how did
Yeah.
you reconcile those two worlds?
Um, I have finally understood for myself that the entrepreneurial path is inherently a spiritual one. And it's a spiritual one because it is one of creation, and it is one of built. I am a firm believer that, the economic engine that is capitalism, there are those that extract financial benefit, and then those that create. And if you are a creator, you are on inherently a spiritual path, because in order to understand what our customers' needs are, to understand what our people's needs are, we must be empathetic, and we must understand where they are in their own lives. Because, we're not just asking them to trade their labor for money, we're asking them to contribute their value in their performance and their work to build things. And so I had been on this path of pursuing just financial benefit, just the numbers, just the money, but I wasn't being fulfilled because I hadn't understood this. And so that burnout took me to a place of understanding that the suffering that I was in was a choice. And once I understood this and started to evolve, and I could start to choose something different. And as I was choosing this other path, I started to realize that my thoughts about making money and business were also choices, right? And so everything I thought I had to just throw away and start over, because what I finally understood is that a lot of my suffering came from this conflict between wanting to do good and making money, because I thought inherently they were not able to be together and reconcile. And once I understood that that was my own visionary problem, that I just couldn't see it, that changed everything. Because once I started working deeper on my own personal growth and my own growth as a human, my entrepreneurial skills really started to flourish in a whole different way.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. And also, uh, was there a moment that failed that, I, I mean, they feel like opposites, or did one unlock the other?
What do you mean? You mean in terms of the business and then the spirit?
Yes, I mean, the business and the spirit have ever they felt the opposites, or did one just unlock the other one?
Yeah, the spiritual definitely unlocked the entrepreneurial. I was, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family of immigrants that were entrepreneurial. And so I saw it. And there was never a point in my life where I thought I would get a job and go work for another company. And so I bought my first business when I was 21 years old, and that was the path that I was on. However, it took me a very long time to realize what I was doing was reliving the model that I had been shown. And for my parents, they came with no understanding of the language, with no money, no understanding of the culture. And so they did everything based on grit, right? Just sheer grit and effort. And, I remember Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all of these holidays that everybody's off. And, my mom had a business in a mall and everything else in the mall is closed, but we were open. And it took me a very long time to understand that that was part of this grit and just drive. And the craziest thing is those were bonus days to them. So if there was like 10 holidays in a year, that was 10 holidays that they actually did surprisingly better than one would think. But that was 10 extra days of revenue that other businesses weren't counting on. And it allowed them to, have the extra, pay for school, do those little things. But it was indicative of a mentality. And so here I was in my early 20s, going into my late 20s, really starting to just do more of it. But I was fortunate enough to go to school here, grew up here, understand the culture. I'm very Americanized, and I was mirroring them. And I didn't understand that I hadn't found my own voice, and that the suffering and the unhappiness was trying to fit their way of doing things into my life and trying to do it that way because it was the only way that I had been shown. And then once I started to go within myself and see where I am spiritually, I understood that, okay, everything I've learned, there's still benefit. There's a benefit to it, and there's lessons, and there's an intuition I have from being around that since I was, 7, 8 years old. But the spiritual growth is what allowed me to unlock the true voice of how I'm going to do things or how I am doing things.
Yeah, that integration you talk about is it's so refreshing. And also tell us about the owner's part. Why do
Yeah.
you believe that ownership is a vehicle for freedom and not just financial gain?
Yeah. So the owner's path is really, it started as a sort of my own growth. My company, Use Fund Capital, we're a private equity firm, and I spent my career doing what was called leverage buyouts, but essentially using debt and portion of equity to buy businesses. And over time, that has evolved into private equity, was more formal, where we use investor money to buy bigger businesses. And what I started to understand is, look, there's still all these great small businesses out there. And there's still all of these people who have not had the benefit that I have of understanding the beauty of being in this entrepreneurial path. And so what that gave me was an opportunity to go out there and teach. And so this really is, I think the greatest thing I can do with my life is to teach and cultivate other leaders. And I think one of the best ways I can do that is through the path of ownership in small businesses. And if I can help people buy their first business, there's literally thousands of coaches now who say they'll teach you how to buy a business. What I'm trying to teach people is how to buy a business and be fulfilled, but to how to evolve into being true leaders in their business and their community. And so I really love what I do because I can show people that in this thing that seems very transactional and being a business, there's this deep um, cultivation of a purpose in the work that you're doing, which people find very fulfilling, especially those who have spent the last 20 years in a corporate job where they feel like the company doesn't care. And here now they ingrain themselves into businesses that are totally integrated into the business and the community.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And what does the spiritual entrepreneurship look like in practice?
The first thing is you must have a very clear vision. You must have a very clear vision of what your purpose and what you're doing. For me, that is to be an example, is to be a very large example of a heart-centered leader and helping other leaders become that. I believe that, we have this beautiful vehicle of capitalism that creates wealth, creates more money that we can go out there. But it is our duty as entrepreneurs to take that wild animal and steer it towards the good and the greater good of society and the world around us. So you've really got to have a vision. And so once you've got that vision, you must be very committed and clear about how you're going to get there. And that comes with a deep set of values, right? Building a set of values and living from that place of values. That will take you down that path and keep you in the place you want to be. Because really the problem is never not enough opportunity. It's too much. And we get lost in not being able to focus. And I think the third, which is probably actually the first, is cultivating the greatness within a person, within yourself. I think everybody that is born on this planet has a unique greatness within them that just needs to be cultivated. I believe the cacophony of the world prevents us from hearing that voice. And it is our duty to help filter the noise so we can hear what's within us. And when we can tap into that, then everything else aligns and then the path is there. As I said at the start, that the creation of anything, which is very much what entrepreneurs do, is inherently a spiritual path.
Yes. I just love that ownership as an act of liberation and not as domination.
Yeah.
And yes, that's so lovely. And you founded the Charge of Direct Experience. So what does that mean? I mean, what does that name mean? And why is direct experience is so vital today?
Yeah, so I want to be clear. I'm a member of the board. As my dear friend Alex Patterson is the founder of the Church of Direct Experience, and what we are is we are a church that exists to create a safe, secure, and supported environment for people to experience a direct connection to God, to the divine, through the use of sacred plants in sacred ceremonies that we hold throughout the year. And so when we say direct experience, we are all connected divinely, and we do not operate as any sort of dogma or doctrine of how to live your life. There are principles that we teach and values that we have, but ultimately our desires for anyone of any faith to come to our church and experience their direct connection with God, because we all have it, and to be with the divine. And I think that really helps people understand who they are.
Yeah, that's a bold mission, and yet it feels so deeply ancient. And
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
many of our listeners feel stuck between the purpose and paycheck. What is one small step they can take to begin their inner shift?
I think one of the biggest things people have to understand is this idea of ownership. And if you want to become a business owner, and that's the way you want to go, or you want to even in cultivating your purpose, we really have to become owners of our lives. And it doesn't mean necessarily control. In fact, it almost means the opposite, is that in surrendering to what's happening and experiencing, we truly get in control of what's there. But is to really accept ownership over things and understand that what's happening, quote unquote, to us is actually happening for us. Very much in the way we started this conversation, we're talking about your experience. And if you can take ownership over your experience of the things that occur in your life and create the meaning behind what is happening and where to focus based on those experiences, that is truly going to be the way for you to take those steps towards finding that path of purpose. Because without it, the beauty of life, nature, God is that if you don't do that, you just won't hear it. And it'll pass you by and you'll wake up one day 70 and 80 years old wondering what you've done with your life. And it really is just a matter of slowing down enough to really see and start to experience and understand that we are fully in control of that life experience.
Yes, that's so wonderful, and thank you for sharing that with our listeners. That I think every word of your holds so much power itself. And also, what did you wish that someone told you at your own crossroads?
That's a great question. Um, I wish with the one thing that someone had told me, and I don't think I would have listened. This is the other part of it. Um, it is to be patient. We have one life. It is very short in the grand scheme of time, right? If you're fortunate enough to live more than 100 years, that's still to us humans. It seems like a very long time, but to history and life, it's a very short time. And so patience really is about experiencing the moment, not being so focused on the outcome of, I want to lose 20 pounds. And I'm like, I got to lose 20 pounds. I got to lose 20 pounds. I got to lose 20 pounds. And that's all you focus on. Yes, you must have an obsession towards the goal, but in your day to day life, it's let me appreciate what this is. Let me slow down and see, how does this food taste? How does it feel at the gym? Because in our lives and in the course of our lives, the only thing we truly will ever own is right now. Right. Even where we started the conversation 20 minutes ago, that's gone. Right. We can't ever go back there. There's a recording of it, not the same. This conversation we're having is right now and what's next in those moments. And I wish someone had been able to explain that to me, because in those early days of wanting to be so diligent about getting out of burnout and quote unquote failure, there are moments in my life that I wish I would have been able to experience more deeply, because they would serve me more now. And I can only say that now in hindsight.
Yeah, that's so powerful that you shared. And if my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
The best way is to visit just my website and my blog, which is just loukim.com, LOUKIM.com. And on that website, there are links to everything that I'm involved in. So, and it'll have, explanations of what those things are, but it'll redirect you into all my social media. But that's the easiest way.
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all the details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and listen more from you, because you are a wonderful person. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge, all your experience, your stories. This is really an inspiring conversation. And to all my listeners, Louis Kim reminds us that breakdown can be breakthrough when it's met with intention. Whether you were burned out achiever or a soul searching professional or simply someone craving more meaning in your Monday, let this be your permission to pause, pivot, and pursue purpose. Until next time, protect your peace, honor your calling, and trust the path, even when it starts with fire.